Animal Collective are back, and when I say back, they truly are back with a bang with the new album Time Skiffs here. It is their first album in quite a couple of years. They have been on a bit of a shaky run. Their most recent material since about 2012, I think, really? 2012, really? Realistically, probably, yeah. Yeah, a lot of their material in about 10 years has not been received too well. I will say it's been a while since I went back to painting with, so my memory of it could be a little shaky, but I don't know, man. I thought there were some good tracks on there. I like the colourful, sparkling pop tracks that they went for, like Golden Gals and Floridada. They were fun. I enjoyed those tracks. I thought they weren't quite as weak as some people, acted like they were, and it was a solid release. I think sometimes with artists like this, when you've established such a creative approach to your music for as many years, the immediate response is to be a bit disappointed if it isn't quite on the level of what you wanted it to be, or it isn't quite on the same wavelength as what their older stuff used to be. It's really hard for indie bands that came out in the 2000s to get this right. So many of them have just flopped for like the 2010s and beyond. It's a rough time. It's a rough time for these guys. Even not using an example from the 2000s, but a more recent example with FKA Twigs. I mean, we saw how that mixtape did not go down anywhere near as well with the core fan base as her, older material, and she's not been around for that long either. It's a risky game to play, but sometimes it just takes some time getting your fans on board, and you do get the people finally, supporting the newer stuff. But Time Skiffs is okay, man. This one's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. All well in the end, because I think this is a return to what fans were looking for. It brings back the earthly sounds of some of their older material, thinking of albums like Sung Tongs, and also the psychedelic sounds of like Merryweather post Pavilion. It's just combining all the aspects of what made them great to begin with onto one album. I mean, it's far from a perfect album or anything like that, but it is a very good one. It immediately starts off with such a lively burst of your colourful quality streets that you get in the packets or any other chocolates from the UK. Not celebrations, because I wouldn't really say they're like colourful, but maybe something like a roses. A box of roses. It always goes down well. It just teeters on the right level of psychedelic goodness that I think they just get right on this track. The vocals sound really great as well. It just transports you back to those days of 2000s Anko, to be honest. Really strange and quirky sounds coming together on Car Keys that I really like. Just a really weird melding pot of different ideas coming through, and it just sounds really fun. I don't know what it is about this track or some of the other tracks on this album, but they just have this energy to them that I just find really infectious. Weirdly, it just sounds like they're having a good time, if that even makes sense or is even possible to have on an album that sounds like this. Usually when an artist sounds like they're having a good time, you'd say it for someone like an Anderson .Paak, who just always sounds like he's full of energy, full of buzz, and just brings a load of personality to his songs. So it's weird to say it about a track like this or an album like this, but it just makes sense. It does sound like they're just having a great time. The guitar and drumming syncopates so well on Prester John. Oh my god. And a nice little bass line coming through as well. I think it's a bass, or maybe it's a tuned down guitar. That's sometimes a little bit of a shaky thing for me. Differentiating the difference between them. Maybe I'm just a bit of an amateur, but I don't know. There is something about that that's hard to pick out with the ear sometimes. But love the hook on this one, man. Just the way the vocals come together. It just all sounds so good. Prester John. They've so obviously always taken influence from like the 60s sunshiny pop days, the psychedelic pop days of that era. But this track really just takes it back full circle to that era, to be honest. There's some really cool natural sounds that come through with the track Walker. I feel like I'm walking through like a rainforest on this one. I like it on this album where there are moments that feel like they are transporting you to a different universe. They're just bringing in these weird little sound effects that I think sound really great. And I think the centerpiece of this album, honestly, is Strung with Everything. I think this track is probably the best song on this whole album. Love the way the vocals harmonize on the chorus as well. The sun's no better off lately. I think that section of the track sounds fantastic. And then that like piano mashing section just sounds so good. Reminds me of like some 70s artists, like a Randy Newman, just some kind of jamming section that you'd maybe find on one of his albums with the piano and things like that. It just sounds so cool. For the runtime as well, I just think they pack in so much. It's not like the track stays stagnant for the whole time. It really moves along and keeps you on your toes in such a great way. It's a shame I can't quite say that about tracks like Cherokee and Passerby though. I definitely think the latter, particularly Passerby, is really slow moving and sluggish. I really found this one a bit patience testing to sit through, especially considering how much of this album is so lively and upbeat. I just feel like slowing it down the way they do for that one just really rubs me the wrong way a little bit. I just would have preferred the songs to just keep going with that momentum. Cherokee's okay, don't get me wrong, it's a bit more pensive. It feels like there's a slight pace to it, but obviously it is a bit slower. I don't mind this track, but again, thinking back to the better tracks on the album, this one just isn't much of a standout to me. But I like it when we get to We Go Back, because the wackier vocals come through again here. Maybe the wackiest on the whole album. I feel like they're really spazzing out on the vocals here. It sounds really great. And once again, that lively energy just feels like it's coming back. And I just would have preferred to see it stay for as long as the whole runtime of this album. That being said though, the final track is actually quite lovely. It feels like a bit more of a ballad, which is interesting considering much of the album doesn't really go for that kind of feel. But this is a nice track. I feel like the imagery that's conjured up with the lyrics is pretty impressive as well. An interesting way to close things out. Not a major highlight for me on the album, but I do think it is pretty good and a nice way to close things out. Just feels a bit softer, more delicate. But overall, man, I mean, there's only mostly good things to say about this album. I think it's a nice return to form, and I think generally the fans of this band are going to be really happy to have gotten this album, especially considering so much of their albums haven't gone down as well for like I say, pretty much a decade at this point. So yeah, I think this one is going to be a fan favorite for the fans. I think it's 7 out of 10. I think this is good. I think this is very good. I'm happy with this. I think there's lots of great tracks. Like I say, Prester John, Strung with Everything, 2 major highlights in this band's career. I think this goes head to head with any of their albums, to be honest. I'd put these tracks up there with that kind of praise. I think they're great. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this review. Hopefully you enjoyed the album as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. And goodbye.